Okay, so it's time for the June wrap up. I'll pick out my book of the month and then talk about what I'm going to be reading in July. But first, I want to give a big thank you to Nick at the Book Graveyard. He sent me this shirt. You might have seen some of these around. He made a little print run of these. He does some screen printing, and I think he did a fantastic job for the Staw Books logo. And most people know this was Donald A. Walheim's kind of big publishing push that he did, all these yellow spine dolls and even beyond. And I think Nick did a great job with this shirt. I'm definitely going to be wearing this on some special occasions on the channel. Now, June was kind of a different month for me. It definitely was a month that threw me out of my rhythm, which is good at times, but the first 2 weeks of the month, I was down in Arizona, kind of helping my parents with some family matters, and I did drive down by myself and drive back up. I'm going to be doing a kind of a road trip book haul for some of the books that I found along the way later in this month, and I didn't have a lot of time to read down there. I was pretty busy, but with all that driving, I definitely listened to some audiobooks, so I'll talk about that in a minute. And then as soon as I got back, I had one day back home. I had gotten food poisoning from something I ate on the way back home. And then me and the wife and the dog, we packed up and went on a big camping trip, met up with some friends for another week. So I really was only home for about 1 week in the month of June. I still got some reading done, as you'll see. But it was a little lighter month. But like I said, it took me on my rhythm. It was kind of good. It kind of reset me in a way. And I'm already hitting the ground running for July, as you'll see there. Now, the first book I want to talk about that I kind of finished up in June was a short story collection called Change the Sky and Other Stories by Margaret St. Clair. And I kind of messed up on this one a little bit. I started this book so long ago and just slowly read through these stories that I don't really want to do a full standalone book review for this one. I don't think I would do it justice. So I'm going to do a very quick mini review of this one right here in this monthly wrap up. So first off, I would say if you're out in the wild and you see a copy of this book, pick it up. I think it's one of her kind of most well-received collection of short stories. Most of these stories were all written in the 50s. There were two that were written later, but I didn't like them as much. I've been reading a lot of short story collections lately, and this sits above average for everything I've been reading lately. The average stories in here were still really good, and then there was just some really great stories in here as well. Now, Margaret St. Clair, she kind of has this kind of softer tone to her stories. You could almost think of like Ray Bradbury or maybe even Clifford Simak. But she has this beautiful prose. She's going over a lot of issues with the human condition and the pros and cons of that. And she explores all kinds of different themes and ideas about what it is to kind of be human. There's stories that end well. There's stories that are kind of like in the middle. They're just kind of fun. And then there's some very dark ending stories in this one as well. And so I'm going to quickly go over a few of the stories that were standouts to me. There was a lot, but I'm going to go through this pretty quick. So the kind of lead story in here, the first one, it's called Change the Sky, and it was kind of the name of this one as well. It had to do with the virtual world, written in the 50s, and it was done really well. There's a audiobook narration of it on YouTube, so if you want to just kind of check it out, it might be a good place to kind of see what her writing's about and see if you want to read more from her. Then there was The Age of Prophecy. This was a post-apocalyptic story that had a lot to do with religion. It was very thought-provoking. Thirsty God was a story about a guy on Venus who was running from some aliens. He kind of ends up hiding in this shrine where there's these other aliens that start thinking of him as a god. And the title Thirsty God has to do with his biological hydration. And it was very interesting, very well done. It was kind of a fun one with a twist. Then there was The Altruist, and this was about these super altruistic aliens and this bad human that goes to kind of manipulate them in a way. And it had some twists and turns again, very well done. The Wines of Earth was about some aliens who were into wine who came to Napa Valley and traded some wines with a local winemaker there. This one was very fun to read. I read this to my wife and she loved it. Then there was Graveyard Shift. This was about a Bloom's Sportsman's Emporium, and this is like a 24/7 sporting warehouse that kind of caters to everybody around in this town, and it has to do with this one store clerk that works there and all the weird goings on that start happening or that have been happening around this place. It gets into kind of mythic, legendary creatures and stuff, and it was a lot of fun as well. Then the Egg of the Month from All Over was a very interesting story about a Egg of the Month club and a guy who loves hatching these exotic eggs, and he kind of gets caught in the middle of a little bit of a feud. And then there was the last story I'll briefly talk about, The Death of Each Day. And this was, this could have definitely inspired a lot of other stories that came out later. It was about a, decades long war where it had finally ended, but people just didn't know how to kind of stop fighting. And another one that was really well done. Here's the whole list of all the stories that are in the collection. Like I said, if you find this book, it could be a little hard to find. Definitely pick it up, read some of these stories. They were fantastic. I definitely want to read some more from Margaret St. Clair, and then I might end up doing some bigger review talking about a lot of her stories. Okay, I also read The Magic Labyrinth. This kind of concludes the main storyline of the River World. I've got many thoughts on this one. He intended this to kind of wrap it up, but then he later wrote The Gods of Riverworld, so I'm committed enough. I'm going to read The Gods of Riverworld, and then I'm going to do a series review and give you my total thoughts on that one. Let's just say this didn't make it as book of the month this month. And then one that I'd read before and I really didn't like was Gregory Benford's Timescape. And I thought maybe I was missing something. I read this 20 odd years ago, and on this long road trip I did the audiobook of this one. I can appreciate it a little bit more, and I think audiobook is definitely the way to go with this one, but still just a long slog to get through. Even listening to it, I had to take breaks because he just rambled and rambled. It is a very well-renowned book. Gregory Benford is very intelligent. He can write. He just, I don't know, there's something about this book that it just makes it hard to read. He didn't tell the story maybe in the most efficient way, but there was some really great ideas, and we'll just leave it at that. Then I read Immortality Inc. by Robert Sheckley. After these two kind of, I wouldn't call them duds, but just books that were hard to get through, this was a breath of fresh air. This was a short, fast read. I basically read this in one day. I did kind of a glowing review of this one. Almost called it a 5-star book to me, but I think it was just, after reading those last two, this really stood out as entertaining, thought-provoking, action-packed, everything that I wasn't liking from those other books. But realistically, this is like a solid 4-star book. It was Robert Sheckley's first book, and I'm not going to talk too much about it. You can go watch my review if you want some more background on that. And then I finished off the month with Snow Crash, and this was a buddy read with Richard Rempel over at Vintage SF. We had a great discussion on this. I think the discussion made it sound like maybe I fell in love with this book. We really didn't talk too much about the cons in this one, but it was pretty long. Stevenson takes you on all kinds of tangents. He comes up with a bunch of ideas. A lot of them were probably rehashed from other novels, including Neuromancer and other cyberpunk books, but it is definitely a satire. He is kind of poking fun at some of that in a tongue-in-cheek way. There's a lot of stuff to like about this one, but at times when I was reading this, I just wasn't enjoying it as much as I would think I would have. But it's still one that I'm really glad I read because it's a very influential book, very popular in the science fiction world. So, and me and Richard had a blast talking about it. So, as far as Book of the Month goes, I'm going to give it to Immortality, Inc. by Robert Sheckley. I think if you haven't read anything from Sheckley, this would be a great place to start. I think it was. I think that was what some of the feedback was. I'm definitely going to be reading more books from him in the future when I need something to kind of jar me out of a kind of a bad streak, or just something different. I think I know what I'm going to get from him, and it's going to be entertainment. So now let's get into some of the things that are going on for July. So I already finished the next in my little Harlan Ellison journey. This is The Beast That Shouted Love at the Heart of the World. It's a short story collection, and that'll be my next review coming out in probably just a few days as I discuss that. And then I'm also reading Dr. Blood Money by Philip K. Dick. Almost done with that. That'll be the next one coming out. And then I'm probably going to read Starship Troopers next. I've read just a few from Heinlein, but I haven't read this, and this is one of his most popular ones, so excited to read that. And then I got the next Wife's Wildcard pick coming up, The Universe Against Her by James H. Schmidt. Haven't read anything from Schmidt's yet, so excited to read that, and it looks like a very short, quick, easy read. Then I'm going to be reading Bring the Jubilee by Ward Moore. This is one that's on the list of the masterpieces of science fiction, along with Starship Troopers. So I'm continuing on that series. I'm into the 90s in this series that I'm doing of 140 books. And then I have yet to read anything from Octavia Butler, so I'm going to start with her first book called Pattern Master. Gonna definitely try to read that this month. And then if I have time, there's another one from the list here, Flowers for Algernon. This will be a reread for me, but it's part of the masterpieces of science fiction that I'm reading through. And then if I have time, I'm going to try to get to Gods of Riverworld and wrap up this series, the Riverworld series, and that way I can kind of move on to the next series that I want to tackle. And I'm not quite sure. I might even do a poll on my community post of what the next series that I should maybe get into would be. Give you some options. Maybe you can vote on it. So that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching. Always let me know what you read in June. Tell me what some of your favorite books were and maybe what you're thinking about reading in July. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.